Most people miss what's right in front of them, but you don't. You notice the shift in someone's tone before anyone reacts, the pause that lingers just a second too long, the smile that looks right but feels off. And before a word is even said, your mind is already connecting the dots. Not slowly, not consciously, almost automatically. You pick up patterns in how people behave. You replay conversations long after they've ended. You sense tension before it becomes visible. And sometimes it feels like you're seeing too much, like your mind never really lets you just exist in the moment. There's a certain kind of person who experiences the world this way, and more often than not, they're misunderstood. They're called overthinkers, too sensitive, too intense. People might tell them to just relax or stop reading into things so much. But that never quite lands, because it's not a habit they chose. It's something that just happens. And over time, that misunderstanding can quietly turn into self-doubt, like maybe something is wrong with the way they see the world. But there's a different way to understand this. What you're experiencing isn't simply overthinking, it's a heightened form of awareness, and there's more going on here than people realize.
Psychologically, this kind of awareness is often tied to how the brain processes information, especially in areas related to threat detection and social perception. Some research points to increased activity in parts of the brain like the amygdala, which is responsible for detecting emotional signals and potential danger, even in subtle forms. Others highlight the role of the prefrontal cortex, which is constantly analyzing, predicting, and trying to make sense of complex social cues. But in real life, this doesn't feel like neuroscience. It feels like noticing everything. It feels like your mind is always scanning for meaning, trying to understand not just what's happening, but what's underneath it. And that kind of constant awareness doesn't come from nowhere. It's often shaped much earlier than people think. In many cases, it begins in environments where paying attention wasn't optional, it was necessary. When emotions in a household were unpredictable, when reactions felt inconsistent, when understanding someone's mood could mean the difference between connection and conflict. The nervous system adapts to that. It learns to stay alert, to read between the lines, to anticipate what might happen next. Not because it wants to overanalyze, but because it once needed to.
Over time, that pattern becomes automatic. You grow into someone who can sense what others are feeling, even when they don't say it. Someone who notices details others miss. Someone who can understand people on a level that feels almost instinctive. But the same awareness that allows you to see deeply also makes it harder to switch off. Because when your mind is trained to look for meaning, it doesn't always know when to stop. And this is where things get complicated. Because from the outside, this kind of awareness can look like anxiety, or overthinking, or even emotional instability. But internally, it's something different. It's a system that learned to stay engaged, to stay prepared, to stay aware. Not better, not worse, just different. Some people move through the world with less internal noise. They take things at face value. They don't feel the need to analyze every detail. And that comes with its own advantages. But this way of being, this constant awareness, it comes with its own kind of depth. You don't just hear words, you notice intention. You don't just see actions, you sense patterns. And sometimes you understand people before they understand themselves. But there's a quiet trade-off that doesn't get talked about enough. Because when you're this aware of others, it's easy to lose clarity about yourself. You can become so focused on reading the room that you forget to check in with your own internal state. You can spend so much time anticipating reactions that your own needs start to feel secondary. And in some moments, awareness turns inward. You start analyzing your own thoughts, your own reactions, your own emotions, until even your inner world feels like something to decode. And that can be exhausting. But there's also something else here, something that often goes unnoticed. Because the same awareness that makes things feel intense is also what gives you emotional precision. You don't just feel things vaguely, you understand them. You can sit with complexity. You can hold contradictions. You can recognize when something doesn't quite align, even if you can't explain why. That's not a flaw. That's a form of perception. And like any form of perception, it has its strengths and its limits.
It can help you build deep, meaningful connections, but it can also make you more sensitive to disconnection. It can give you insight into people, but it can also make it harder to fully trust what's simple and direct. And none of that makes you broken. It means your system learned to pay attention in a very specific way, a way that made sense at some point in your life, a way that still shapes how you experience the world now. So if you've ever felt like your mind doesn't give you a break, like you're constantly aware of things others don't seem to notice, like you're always thinking just a few layers deeper than everyone else, there's a reason for that. And it's not something you need to fight against. It's something to understand. Because when you start to see your awareness not as a problem, but as a pattern, something begins to shift. The pressure to fix yourself softens, and in its place, there's a quieter kind of clarity. That this way of being, as intense as it can feel sometimes, also carries a kind of depth that isn't easy to teach. And maybe the next step isn't about becoming less aware. Maybe it's about learning where your awareness belongs and where it doesn't have to go. Because there are parts of your experience that are still unfolding, patterns you haven't fully seen yet, ways your mind works that might start to make more sense the more you look at them gently. And if this felt familiar, there's more to uncover about the way you think, the way you feel, and the quiet logic behind it all.
If this kind of content resonates with you, you can stay connected by subscribing and turning on notifications so you don't miss future uploads.